All right, so welcome everyone. As you know, my name is James Vidler, Director of Technology here at Agility. We had already sort of gone over a few things for setup. At this point, I hope most of you guys are all set up, but if you do have any questions or you're stuck on something, just put your hand up and Tunes, Charlie, or myself can help you out. So a few things about me that you should know is that I'm the former head of our professional services department. Oh, that light was good.
You want it not?
Oh, not that one. No, it's too bright. Never mind. I'm the former head of the professional services team here at Agility. So as Joel had alluded to, we used to have our own division that would build websites for customers. So we build custom websites using our own platform for customers. So I led the team of developers and project managers. And now most of those folks actually work at IMC, which is also referred to as Agility North. Which is the sort of spun off services team. Think of me as the partner and developer advocate. So my role here at Agility is to support you guys. So if you have any feedback, any questions about anything, let me know. It's my role to make sure that what our engineering team is putting out there empowers and helps you guys build better solutions, preferably faster and more profitable. So ask me about anything around development, architecture, trainings and docs, feature requests, Azure, DevOps. I've sort of done them all, and I can certainly give you guys some advice if you're looking to set up any of that stuff. You can email me, find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or just show up here and I'll meet you for a beer. So a couple tips on this workshop to sort of get the best out of this is I would recommend having a copy of these slides on your own machine. There are going to be some sections where I'm going through and doing stuff and you guys are following along. If you are a bit behind and you want to get caught up, the steps that I'm going through and you'll be seeing are actually all written up in each sort of section in these slides. So if you need to go back and refer to something, or if you didn't have time to do something today and you want to be able to look at it later, you can refer to these slides to be able to get a breakdown of exactly what I'm doing in each one of these steps. So you're going to follow along in the labs. The labs will be sort of highlighted. You'll know when to follow along. There will be a 15-minute break, so there'll be time to catch up during the break, or if you want to have a bio break, get a coffee, whatever that might be. And of course, if you are totally stuck, you can ask the person beside you, or Toons and Charlie and Joel will also be around for a bit to help you guys out. So if you get stuck in anything, let them know. Put your hand up, and they'll help you out. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to keep the focus a little narrow. First, we're going to go over how Agility works, just generally, what it's all about, what makes it a bit different from other CMSs, and just kind of give you guys an overview of generally what Agility is all about. Then we're going to take the sort of core concepts that we're going to learn, and we're going to go through the practice of actually building a functioning blog. Then we'll break for 15 minutes. And then we'll do we'll actually go through the process of how to deploy a website to Azure. So after you actually made those changes, you can deploy those directly to live. If we have time, I'd love to go over custom fields, which is something new that not a lot of you guys know about. So hopefully we have enough time for that. But let's jump into it. So Agility architecture. Number one, Agility is a true cloud solution. So what does that mean? That means it's a multi-tenanted cloud hosted. So that means if we roll out an update to all of our customers, an update, it goes out to all of our customers. Everyone's on the same version of Agility. So when we do a deployment, it affects everybody. And so we're able to make updates for customers that have been on our platform for years, and they just get those automatically. So an example of that is a while back when I first started working at Agility, we used to have an old UI. I think you guys might remember that old UI. And so, we had a bunch of customers on that. And then we did a new version of Agility, and we were able to, because everyone's on the same app and same code base and we control all the database schemas, we're able to upgrade everybody all at once. So we were able to go from like a legacy system to bringing everyone into the future. So that's one advantage that we have. Also, Agility is what we call a hybrid CMS. So when I say hybrid, it's a bit of a new term that we're trying to coin. We take what's great about a traditional CMS, where you sort of have a web-based SDK what integrates with your content management system, and we'll go through some demos of that. But we also have all of those things exposed via REST APIs. So in this workshop, we'll be focusing mainly on .NET and the sort of traditional way of developing in CMS. But it's important to note that everything you see here that's in Agility, you can get with the REST API. So you can grab stuff, it doesn't have to be a .NET. So it's the benefits of traditional and the benefits of headless sort of all together. And I also wanted to show you guys a quick little video here, just sort of outlining how our architecture works. I'm not going to play the whole thing because there's some parts that aren't quite relevant, but I do want to show you guys the first 3 minutes of this. I was going to explain this, but I feel like Joel, who did this video, does a much better.
Hi, I'm Joel Vardy here at Agility, and I want to take...
Let me just make sure this audio is up.
We watch those videos?
you for a bit of a deep dive into the Agility architecture today. Now, pretty famously, when folks start on their first day at Agility, or when the first time I talk to someone who's going to be developing at Agility, usually I go up to a whiteboard and we draw some circles and some lines to show how things like content sync works, to show where the content lives in the cloud, and things like that. But what I thought I'd do is put this video together to take a look at how that happens in a little bit easier to digest way, so the folks can take a look at how the Agility architecture works, how it's unique, and how it can work for you. Let's take a look. In a traditional web app or website architecture, you normally have a database and the actual website code itself. This means your website needs to be updated by a developer, which isn't optimal, and you're reliant on a database, which tends to be a single point of failure in many scenarios. Now, in a traditional CMS architecture, which evolved out of the need to update your website more often, you often have an administration app and an SDK, or a software developer kit. This means your website content can be updated by everyone, and developers can still change the design somewhat, but they're often limited by the available templates. And there's still this database involved, and if that goes down, your website crashes. Now, Agility CMS works a little differently. Content editors work with the Content Manager application that's designed to make their job easy. Your content is synchronized to the website using a content server. And developers can build whatever they want with that data. It's unlimited creative freedom using something called the Agility.WebAssembly. Now, Agility is also multi-tenanted, so everyone gets the latest version all the time with no downtime. There's no updates, there's no upgrades that you have to worry about. It's all just handled for you. And your data in those content DBs lives in its own separate repository in the cloud. And your synchronized content is stored on your website servers as content files. Now, those web servers can live anywhere. It could be in your hosting environment, a public hosting environment, but we really recommend the Azure cloud, which we can take care of you when you're in there. And that means no matter what happens, your website's going to stay online. Now, on most sites, much of the actual content is made up of static images, files, and videos. And Agility serves all of your static files through a content delivery network, or a CDN, which means fast access worldwide to all your images. And for developers, we provide easy image thumbnailing, resizing, compositing, and quality controls based on simple query strings. So this all just works really well, it's really fast. And moving on, you can see this.
So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. I don't want to watch the full thing of this. If you are interested, this video is available on YouTube. You can watch it a bit further. Joel goes on to talk about some of our other components, such as user-generated content, search, personalization, and e-commerce, which are all sort of other components that are built on top of Agility, which we're not really going to get a chance to cover today. Before I proceed here, does anyone have a burning question they want to be able to add to this in terms of how this architecture works? Cool. We'll move on. So we're going to talk about web content management here a little bit. Web content management is the core component of our CMS. Everything is built on top of that. So the idea is you build your own sort of bespoke schema in the cloud. Every Agility instance, like the one you guys just got access to today, is entirely customizable. So all of the module and content definitions that you create are yours. So you define the pages, the page templates, all the types. And then on the website, really you're just outputting code to be able to integrate with all of that data that you're creating in the cloud. So no two Agility instances are ever going to look alike because they're based on different website requirements. So you don't have a CMS where you sort of have all these sort of turnkey things that you have to build and mold and hack to get things to work your way. Everything is built from the ground up the way you want it to be. All right, so let's jump into a quick little overview of Agility. So actually one of the things I forgot to do, I forgot to sign up for my own sandbox. One sec. You guys will notice here, actually what I'm doing is I'm removing myself from this list of submissions that we have here. All of your submissions you guys did on that form actually goes into user-generated content in here so I can track who has instances. Of course, I also make sure you guys can't create more than one. I just forgot to remove my own. So let me just sign up again. Yeah, actually the cool thing is, while I'm doing this form that you see here is actually built using the Agility Form Builder, which is one of the very few built-in modules that we have. So everyone that has an instance has this module, which just outputs allows you to create a new form in the cloud and then be able to use that without actually doing any code deployment. So I have this actually posting to Webhook, which goes to an Azure Logic app, which goes and gives access to your instance and everything. So it's pretty cool. Now I'm just going to read my email. Bam, there we go. All right, sorry about that. Good to go now. All right, so what you're looking at here, this is the Agility Content Manager dashboard. What you're seeing here at the top, there is a section that allows you to actually connect your Google Analytics account to this. So if you have a website and you have Google Analytics on there, you're tracking all that stuff, you can connect it so that you can get a snapshot of all that data within the CMS. Pretty cool, mainly for people who are actually managing content for the site. Just means that they can sort of keep tabs on traffic spikes and that kind of thing without having to separately log into analytics. It's not meant to replace Google Analytics. Still go there for all your custom reports and all that stuff you need to do, but it's cool to be able to see a snapshot of that stuff here. These sandboxes don't have this connected to anything because there's no analytics tracking on those, but you could always add your own if you wanted to. And then on the left-hand side here, this is sort of where everything is in Agility. So you navigate between pages, shared content, meeting documents, user content, website users, and reports and settings. So I'll go through just high level what each one is sort of all about, and then we'll dive deeper as we go on. So in Pages, Pages is going to show you your page tree. This is pretty straightforward. You have a page in here. Each one of these pages represents a page on the website. When we click on a page here, you can see that there are things added to this page. We can see here under content, there's a main content zone. That's something that gets defined by the page template. We'll talk about that a bit later. And you add modules to content zones to be able to output content. Then we have shared content. Shared content is a place where you would create content that isn't specific to a page, but something that should be accessible across multiple pages. Because otherwise, if you just add a module on a page and the content is on that module, that content that's on that page isn't really easily accessible to any other pages you have. So shared content is a great place to put things like blog posts, product listings, articles, maybe some shared items like header information or footer information, things that appear across multiple pages. So rule of thumb is if content needs to show in more than one page, it should probably be in shared content. Media and documents. This is where you store all of your static assets. So that's things like HTML. Well, I shouldn't say HTML. You could put HTML templates in here and then have those templates loaded into the WYSIWYG editor. So if you wanted like a preset template to put into like what you see is when you get HTML field, you could use that. But normally this is for images and PDFs. So anything that gets served like that on your website should come from media and documents. All this stuff is served over a CDN. So that's a content delivery network. And what that means is that when you upload an image, it propagates actually all over the world. And then when a client tries to access and download that image, they're actually hitting a data center that's the closest to them. So in theory, they're downloading these assets as fast as possible. User content, that's a place where form submissions and things get entered there and get saved there. We're not going to talk about that too much. Website users is another feature that we have that allows you to create and manage member accounts. So the website can have accounts you can log into, reset the password, all those sort of things. So that's not users of this instance, that's users on your website. So think about profiles. That's what that's for. And then we have reports where we have a whole bunch of different reports. We don't need to go through that today. And settings is another spot where we will probably spend a lot of time today because as developers, this is where you configure and create your content schemas. So just as a recap here, web content management, what's in a page? Page is comprised first of a page template. So when you create a page, you specify what page template it has. You can change the template later if you want to and move around the modules, but generally speaking, page has a page template, and that template has content zones. It could have one or many. You would always have at least one, because if you didn't have one content zone, you'd have no way for editors to add modules. So then it's like, what's the point of a content management system? But you can add as many content zones as you like, and then in your layout view, as you'll see, you can sort of put that in wherever place in your code and your layout you want those to actually appear. And then you add modules to those content zones. So modules is a sort of bucket of things an editor can place on a page and have code that actually outputs something. So examples of image sliders is pretty much everything you see on a page. That would be something from like an image slider, a rich text area, a sign up form. Those would all be considered individual modules. So just to recap here, what is in a page? So this is an example of an actual page. It's actually on the sandbox here. The page template is usually not always, is an inner template. So like sometimes you usually would have your header or your footer being set as like shared items, so they appear on every page. So your page templates from page to page don't include the header and the footer because that's just baked into your master page. So in this example, that's how that one's set up. You could always set it up differently too if you wanted. So that's the inner page template there. And then you have a content zone on the left, which is that area there. You have a content zone on the right. So this is an example of a 2-column template. And so you would lay this out and you allow the editors to be able to place in modules in either A or content zone B. So for example, that whole thing on the left is a rich text area, and that little thing on the right is a tiny little sign up pop-up thing, which is another module. Any questions actually before I continue on from there in terms of like how pages sort of are architected?
If you have like a JavaScript file you want to include, would that be added to like shared content?
That's a great question. So and that's actually a common question we get because modules have all the code it needs to be able to like render something. So it's easy to think, okay, well, that has all the HTML and like some server-side code in there that spits something out. But yeah, what do you do with CSS and JavaScript files, and how do you sort of scope those to the individual modules? I'm going to come back to that question because it's a bit of lots of different ways to do it. So I'm going to write that on the board here. Is there any question? We'll come back to that. Okay. But the short answer is you'd want to put that in your website code itself in the project. And we'll go over that after. Okay, so content. Sorry, go ahead, Krish.
So as you saying, the header and footer is shared. So say I have 20 pages. Some pages I want a different footer.
Perfect. Yeah. So what you would do in that case, I was saying is the header and footer would be shared. It doesn't have to be shared. It can be architected whatever way you want to do it. Generally, that's how websites work. But good question. If you wanted to have a different header and a different footer on a different page, what you would do is within your page template, in your code, you'd actually just specify a different master page layout view, which would then maybe inherit its own different header and footer. Or what you could do as well is you could create a page template with a header and a footer content zone that always have those modules there, and you could just swap them. That would be another way of doing it.
No, that means you are more dependent on the programmer, but I'm saying in the editor.
Yeah, exactly. So the best option is to have another page template that references a different layout file. So the editor just needs to select the right template to use a different header or footer. So content definitions, this is where you architect schemas that aren't specific to pages or modules. These would include things like a blog post or a product, structured content that, think of it almost as like you're architecting a database table, that sort of thing. And then once you sort of have that schema, you can create instances of lists and items based on that schema. So you could have a definition called a product and then have like 5 different lists of products all with different names. So you could have like, products A, product B, products, whatever, different reference names. Content can also be scoped just to a specific page. So when you create a content definition, it doesn't have to be on, it doesn't have to be in shared content. You could actually have a module that links out to its own list, which is only accessible on that page. So a good example of that would be something like an image slider. An image slider might have a content definition that represents each slide that's put within that slider, but you don't have to have a shared content list of slides unless you want to. You could just have that list sort of linked directly on the page itself. And so the page has access to this other list of content, but no other pages do. So architecturally, you don't sort of clutter up shared content with a bunch of things that are only specific to a page, and it just sort of gets hidden there and only scoped to that page. And then, of course, it can be shared by being placed in shared content, which is then accessible to everything. Okay, so now that we've sort of gone over a few sort of core concepts here, let's take a moment to do an overview of what this actual sandbox looks like. So one of the things you can do here is you can go to pages. If you scroll down here, you can just, if you don't know what your URL is, you can scroll down to domains. I'd recommend following along this step just so you know how to open up your website. And you can just hit view. You can preview it to preview the latest content, but everything in here is published, so you may as well just hit view live. And then that'll open up a new tab, and your sandbox will load. There we go. So you should all be seeing, well, literally the exact same thing I'm seeing. I'm going to take a minute here and make sure everyone is all set up, because if you're unable to access this, you're probably, something went wrong during your setup. So is everyone able to access their website? Thumbs up all around? Wicked. All right, cool. Moving on. So first of all, a disclaimer, I'm not trying to wow you with like a really crazy front end here. You probably all noticed that this is like based off of the default MVC template that they provided a couple years ago. So this is just using Bootstrap. The purpose of this is just to show you guys the core concept of how to use Agility data and be able to build modules. So for you front-end developers, sorry it doesn't look so pretty, but use your imagination. You can spruce it up yourself if you like. So what we're looking at here, this is a really basic site. As we sort of alluded to with the page templates, the header is sort of just baked into the master page so that it's there. Any page you create, regardless of the page template, it'll just inherit the header. It'll also inherit the footer. When you're looking at the navigation at the top here, each one of these navigation items that you see up here represents a page within Agility. So if I go back into Agility here, you'll see that there's a page for each one of these as you see it here. And of course, I can modify some of this content as well. So on my home page, let's say I want to modify my page title. I can go to the SEO tab, and I can change my menu text, which is actually the text that appears in the menu there. Change it to my updated homepage. So I'm just showing you guys sort of how basic editor change. They've changed something. They can save the item. You'll see here that this page goes into staging mode. So that means that there is a pending change to this page. It has been published before, but there is a pending change. And I can go back, view my website here. I can refresh the page with F5. You can see my page title still hasn't updated. It still says home. It hasn't updated yet. So that's by design. Now, if I want to see what this is actually going to look like before I publish it, we have preview. So preview allows you to preview your content before you publish it. So that's what we're seeing here. When I preview this, you'll see that there's a preview bar that actually gets output directly at the top. And this is actually enabled because there's a couple placeholders you put in your master view file that when preview mode is executing, some JavaScript gets output and then just automatically adds this to the top. So as long as you have that placeholder in your code, you'll get that preview bar at the top. And you can see here my homepage hasn't changed. My title has not changed yet. Oh, right, because I'm not using menu text here. That's probably why. Oh, actually, it changed here. Sorry, my bad. I changed the wrong field. So it's changed my menu text, which is what it appears in the menu, but my actual page title didn't change itself. If I wanted to change my page title, I would just go back and do it on the other field, but that's fine. I'll leave it like that. So let's assume now I want to actually commit that change and publish this. So I can hit publish. And so what's going to happen here, you're going to see whatever change you made there, it's going to sync. So it turns blue, and you'll actually see this little status icon there at the top saying that things are syncing, and then it just goes away. So what actually happens here behind the scenes is as we publish this page, the Agility content server knows that, hey, I need to essentially copy this content directly to any web servers. So in Agility, we actually have this website listed as one of our syncing web servers. So here is where we have a list of all of our domains that we want to sync content to. In this case, everyone has their sandboxing pre-set up to sync to their own server. So when we publish, the content server actually makes a request specifically to a WCF endpoint on the website. I'll go over that momentarily. And it'll then accept the request and go and download that file from the content server. It takes that and places it within the Agility content repository, which is just a fancy word for saving it in the file system in a specific place that Agility looks for stuff later. So all of your content is synced directly to your web server, and your web server has a copy of all of the content you need to power your website. The beauty about that is that you can actually, for whatever reason, decide to deactivate the web server. So if you have a web server that's working perfectly and you don't want anything to change, and you're afraid someone's going to screw something up in the instance, you can actually deactivate that web server, make a ton of changes from the CMS, test things on a different server first, make sure everything's perfect. Then only when you know that server is okay and the changes you made are going to work properly, you can just reactivate that other server and sync that content through and just make sure, okay, yeah, we're all good here. The other benefit of that is that at any point in time, if the customer just stops paying us licensing, we can just deactivate their instance. But the cool thing is that their website actually still remains up entirely because it has a copy of all the content it needs already. So they won't be able to publish new things, but their website can remain up entirely decoupled from the CMS. So your website doesn't know anything about the database or anything like that. All of the content that happens sort of behind the scenes, so it's also very secure as well. All right, and it's also read-only for that matter too. So if that web server gets compromised for whatever reason, there's no possible way that they can get access to Agility. There's no other way going back. So does anyone have any questions around the general concept of previewing and publishing content before I continue? Go ahead.
Can I preview locally?
If
I just like run, it should.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing that. Yeah, actually, that's actually I think the next thing we're gonna be doing is actually we'll be running this locally. And what happens is there's actually two modes that websites run in. They run in like a production live mode, which is kind of what we're looking at here, and we can preview that servers too still. Any server that you deploy code to, you can preview. So you can have multiple environments. You can always use one for preview. You can preview each one, doesn't matter. So what the benefits of that is you can actually have different code bases on different servers and the same content, but be able to preview each one to see how it works with the different code base. And then to your point, being able to run it locally, when you run code locally, it's essentially always in preview mode. So it's a little bit slower because your machine actually does do a delta check on every page request to make sure it gets the latest content, and that content actually gets saved in your local file system on your computer. Then you can also switch to live mode locally as well, but you got to have content in your content folder because Agility won't be able to synchronize content to your local machine. It doesn't know about your local machine. So if you set it to live mode, you would need to grab the content files from the server, put it in locally, and then you can actually debug your production server running in live mode. So if there's any like weird caching stuff you need to be able to look at or test, you can do that. All right, cool. So now we've done that. Let's do a quick little overview on how Agility and .NET works together. I've already touched a little bit that it's compatible with all versions of MVC. Agility has supported MVC all the way from MVC2, so it's got a long history of working well with MVC. Follows the standard MVC pattern. So if you're familiar with ASP.NET MVC, this is going to be pretty easy for you guys. Agility.web is the central component or assembly that needs to be installed on the website, and that is available on NuGet. We make updates to it every now and again to fix bugs or add new features. In terms of updating the Agility.web, that is entirely up to you as developers and when you want to do that. We do guarantee backwards compatibility because we run numerous tests to make sure that the new update we put in isn't going to break an existing website. But it is up to the developers to actually go through and update the Agility.web. We can't do that for you. And it's probably worth testing a few things too when you're doing that. There's also an Agility Website Service SVC endpoint for syncing content. So that's actually the endpoint that gets used when a content server actually needs to be sync content, it hits that endpoint. So that endpoint needs to be available, and Agility.web handles the syncing for that. Then there's also customizable routing. So you customize exactly how and where Agility sort of butts into your website code and takes over your page routing. So in MVC, there's a route config. You can specify an Agility wildcard route, and you can place that wherever you want. So you could take an existing MVC site that has a whole bunch of routes automatically defined or that already integrates with a whole other system, and you could just add Agility's wildcard route at the end of that route table so that it keeps all your existing logic exactly in place, and then only if it doesn't match any of those, then you can hit the Agility wildcard one. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of if you want to be able to have Agility power just a few things, some things. We get a lot of customers who have big sites that they've already built, but they didn't build it on a CMS, and they want to be able to sort of just like put a CMS on there and just sort of chip away at it every now and again. So using this, you're able to do that. So yeah, it can be set up in any application. So in terms of MVC and how things work, we've talked a little bit about page templates and modules. So we kind of know what those do. A page template corresponds to a .cshtml file, which is a Razor file, so you can use any code in there. So that's a mix of C# and HTML. Same thing for module output. Module outputs can be directly to a partial view, or you can go directly to an MVC controller action result, which is considered to be like a child action result, where you can do more specific business logic, behind the actual front end, and then just clean up and have a nice view model to pass to your partial view. So depending on the complications of your modules, like an image slider, for example, it can probably just be a partial view. You're not doing a lot of business logic in there. Just for simplicity, you can hammer out a partial view for that template quite easily. But if for something more complex, like a advanced listing thing you need to do, or if you need to look up external data sources from like another database or something else, then it's probably better to have that in a controller, and then you can have all your code there and then pass that view model off. As well, Agility provides auto-generated C# API classes representing all your content and module depth. So we're going to go through an example of this in a little bit. But generally speaking, any schema that you define in the cloud, you get a C# representation of that class, and there are ways you can sort of have that automatically updated in your code. So it's just a tip and trick for developers to get things done faster. You have compile time error checking, and there's no risk of you just putting in a typo and crashing the entire application. So use it if you have it. Couple notes on agility.web, just so you guys understand sort of its role in the website. Of course, some of the Agility SDK, there is a dependency on MVC. We do still have legacy support for web forms, but no one really uses that anymore. It has the syncing for you. It's available on NuGet, and does a whole bunch of other stuff too. Page routing, page template execution, module execution, content access deserialization, URL redirections, output caching, preview mode, development mode, live mode, language context management, channel management, and much, much more. So the reason why I want to highlight this to you guys is that a lot of developers are moving to this more headless model. And so they see our REST API and say, oh, I want to use your REST API. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's important to note that these are all the things that the SDK does for you. So if you go headless, you're not using the Agility.web SDK anymore, and you're building your own client to be able to consume and work with that REST API. So you either have to not be able to support any of these things, or you have to build your own implementation of it in some sort of way. So you have to have a thing being like, well, how can you do preview mode? How does the user know they're in preview mode? You have to be able to implement these sort of things so that the customer gets the most out of it. So usually I say if you're using .NET, use Agility.web, go traditional, and you still have the flexibility to go headless at any time. So you can have both working at the same time. So you can have other apps calling the REST API. The website itself can be using the Agility.web SDK. Are there any questions on that at the moment? Yeah.
You ever mix the two?
Of course, yeah.
Like in a single view, like on the same page? I would think some modules might require just headless integration, but I don't know.
It would be pretty rare to do that because you can access any published content just using the SDK. So you don't need to actually make any external REST API call. The only other place where that I have seen that before is sometimes customers have multiple Agility instances. So if they have website A and website B, and they're both separate Agility instances, and they need website A to be able to get content from website B. So there are multiple ways to handle that, including you could also sync content from one site to the other site, but sometimes that's complicated. Is that you could actually just call the REST API to be able to retrieve those items from that other instance. It's more flexible that way. So you can mix content from your site and another site by using that REST API. But typically they wouldn't be mixed together in the same website, in the website
I
code.
can think of a couple of reasons, maybe from a front end development standpoint, where you might want to mix them. Yeah.
Actually, we should talk about that. I'm going to put that as a note because I'd like to pick your brain on that. I think I know where you're going with that, but we'll talk about that afterwards. Because usually what you do is you just sort of build your own control. You can have your own controller action that builds your own API that provides those models out. But you could do it either way. So yeah, we'll talk about that afterwards. The Agility page render lifecycle. So just so you know how generally a page gets rendered, you have an incoming HTTP request. So for example, the About Us page. Then you have a route in your route config, which is where you want Agility to kick into the routing. And then agility.web takes on from there. It knows what page you're rendering. It knows what page templates you're using. It executes the page template, and it loops through each module and executes those modules. And then lastly, that sort of inner page template is passed to your master view, just like a regular .NET site would. Cool. All right, so that kind of covers the initial sort of presentation of sort of what Agility is all about. Now let's dive into actually doing some fun stuff here. So first thing we want to do is want to make sure everybody gets their site running locally in MVC. So what you're going to do is, well, you can just follow along with me actually. I'm going to go into my email here, and I'm going to download, if you haven't already, download the source code. There we go. All right, so you can grab that there. You can just extract in place or put it somewhere else. Doesn't really matter.
Sorry, where did we download that from?
From the email. So the email that you got, there is a unique URL specific to your instance. Click on that, you'll get this this zip file. For some reason, my continuous integration keeps including all these random files that aren't relevant. I have to fix that, but so there's a few things there you can completely ignore. It's also why extracting is taking a bit longer than usual. Cool. So once that's extracted, you guys should see this folder with an S. Then you can open that up, and yeah, this $TF thing is the thing I need to get rid of, so you can ignore that. There's also a few other things here you can ignore too. This one here will be important. Just make note of this. We're going to need it later. This is what we'll need to deploy our website. That's our deployment profile, which has the authentication you need to be able to deploy your website. But to get started here, click on MVC4 sample site and scroll down here, and you'll find there's a solution file right down there called mvcsamplesite.sln. So when you're ready, you can click to open that up. If you do get a prompt saying that you need to install ASP.NET 4, I'm sorry. Take a moment and install that now. Also, if you get this prompt, you can trust me. I didn't put a virus in here. It's okay.
My bad.
No source control. Stop trying to connect. Okay. Is anybody stuck? Anybody not be able to get this up? Oh yeah. Okay, it'll take a sec then. Come on.
Yeah, okay. It's just mobile.
when you do have this open here, really all you should have to do is just hit debug. Just hit start without debugging. It'll build the solution. It'll download any missing NuGet packages. Although I think I included most of them in there, and it should open up in your default browser over ISS Express on a local host, just like we have here. And the cool thing is, Adrian, as you were pointing out earlier, you said, hey, how can we preview this locally? What's actually happening behind the scenes here is in my C drive under Agility Content. Text name on my site here. My site is M6. So this is what the content repository looks like locally. It's the same thing on the servers. So this has all of your content you need to be able to run the site. So I just ran the site for the first time today. You can see the timestamp on these. It just downloaded these automatically when I went to that homepage. And if I go to a different page, you'll see here that that I've got my products. Oh, sorry, let me go back here. Yeah, then now I have more files now. So is everyone able to run this locally? You should have this running on localhost. Thumbs up all around. How are you guys doing in front here? Well. All right, cool.
Go ahead.
Okay. Is it still installing the tank?
Yeah, I'll catch up. Sorry.
All right. Well, I'll go a bit slow. Then I can catch up. So now that we've got this running locally, good there. We can actually take some time now to go ahead and actually start adding some code here and actually building a blog. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a really basic blog just to show the core concepts here. So that normally consists of like a page of structured content, and we'll show a few ways how that can work. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a new page template for our blog. Because right now this sandbox that we have in here has like a 1-column template and like a 2-column template, and that's it. We could use the 2-column template for a blog, maybe have the main stuff in the big one and then a sidebar. But let's go for a cleaner look and actually have like a really skinny main content zone right in the middle, so that when we place the module in, it gets contained at that width, and it's sort of a nice little column so we can actually read that blog post. So I'd like you guys to follow along on this. If I'm going too fast or you want to be able to catch up or refer to what I'm doing after the fact, if you're on this slide on your laptop, you can just scroll down here and this will actually go through and tell you exactly what to do step by step. So to reiterate, we are going to create a new page template. We're going to call it blog template, and it's going to have a single main content zone. We're then going to add code for the template. Then we're going to create a page using our new page template, and then we'll just test it, make sure that we're all good here. And then, further down here, there's literally step-by-step here. I'm not going to go through these, but if you guys want to refer to it, take a look, go ahead. But you can follow along as I'm doing this. So first thing I'm going to do is, because we need to create a new page template, everything you do here when you're creating templates, template definitions, content or module, they're all in settings. So you can go to settings first. Then you're going to scroll down here under customization/development, and you're going to click on page templates. Page templates here, this is going to show you all the page templates that are currently installed. As I'd mentioned, there's just 1 and 2 column templates in here right now. So we're going to create a brand new one. So click on the plus sign to new blog post. And for name, you could just call this blog template. You can call it whatever you'd like, but it might be useful to call it the same thing I am. So if I refer to it later on, you don't get confused. And then under output type here, sorry, for digital channel type, you can just select website. We're only talking about websites here, so just select website. For output type, there actually are two different options here. There's relative URL, which represents a relative path to a partial view within your website code. So, an example of that would be something like this, which is actually what we're going to use. So it's going to be like ~views templates, and we're going to call this blog template .cshtml. So the extension is important here. And that path there sort of corresponds to our MVC solution under views, templates. It's where we've stored the other templates. So to keep it consistent, we're going to just create it in the same folder. The other option here for output type is inline code. We're not going to talk about this too much today, but I do want to touch on it briefly. Inline code is a bit of a, I would say, controversial feature that we have, and you'll see why. It allows you to actually create partial view templates directly in the content manager, and then those actually get synchronized to your web server as content. So that means you can actually create a brand new module or a brand new page template without going into Visual Studio, without doing a website deployment. You can avoid all of those things, and you can just create and have all your code directly in the browser, and it gets managed within Agility. Very similar to content items. You have version history. You can see who makes changes to things. You can preview the template. You can publish the template. So sounds like a really cool thing, right? I think it is, because it's very flexible, and if you need to whip up a quick module and you don't know where the source code is or where something else is, you can just go ahead and add that in. The only warning I'll have around that is that developers are typically very specific about their source control and wanting to know where everything is and making sure everything's consistent and doing that kind of stuff. So what ends up happening is if you do too much of that, you can have like a segregated code base, right? You can have some stuff in inline code, some stuff in the website. It can become difficult to maintain over a long period of time because you're not really sure where things are at. And the partial view stuff does work on the website as well. It could actually get synced and run on the website. So it can be a little like, oh, like how does this work? But it is very cool. We've actually had dev shops and customers who aren't familiar with .NET at all. And they're like, oh, Visual Studio, I don't know what that is. I don't want to, this is too much for me. We show them inline code and they're like, oh, cool, this is perfect. This is what I want. So it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. So now that we've got this relative URL in place for our blog, we're going to create a module zone, aka content zone, same thing. So you're going to click on the plus button right on module zones, and we're going to create a single content zone here, just something right in the middle, and we're just going to keep it contained. So we'll just have one module zone. And so for this, you can just call this main content zone. And you'll see the reference name auto-populates, just leave that as is. And just hit save at the bottom. You'll notice there's a few other options here, not important right now. But shared module zones does allow you to specify a content zone to be shared. So any content that gets placed in that module zone gets propagated to all other pages. So that allows you to have like a sidebar across many sites, many pages, and whatever updates you make in that sidebar one page propagate to all other pages. So we're not going to use that in this case, especially since we just have one content zone. So we'll leave that unchecked. We also have the option to add default modules, which allow you to sort of scaffold a specific page template. So you could have a template that has sort of all these things sort of scaffolded in place, all these modules, so that an editor can easily just add the template to a page, and then they know exactly which modules to be able to just go in and fill in content. So you can keep things consistent and allow them to just sort of keep things easy and not have the sort of blank canvas problem that editors sometimes have. And they're like, okay, well, what do I add in here? And so you can sort of help guide them by providing them a page template with default modules.
Quick question: if you have a default module, are they able to basically remove it?
They can. Yeah. They can decide to say, no, I don't want that. And they can still remove it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So now we'll hit save here, and then at the top, just hit save and close. So this is going to save and create our blog template. So when you're done, you should see it at the top there with the output of the relative URL. And now flipping back to Visual Studio here, this is where we're going to actually add code to make this page template actually work. So the next step here, we are going to go to Visual Studio, and in the root folder here, I'm going to expand views and click on templates. You're going to right click templates and you're going to click on add. Then you can hit add view. So for the view name here, we have to keep it the same name as what we gave it in the in Agility. So we'll call this blog template. You can deselect, use master page. This is going to be a partial view. Doesn't really matter though if you just create this. If you create the template and it has a bunch of like boilerplate stuff in there, just delete it so it's empty.
I got an exception. I ignored it. Problem solved.
Question.
Yep.
I just copied and pasted one of the other templates and renamed it. That's fine, right?
Yep. Yep. That's a shorter way to do it.
I don't think there's like any secret code behind CSH.
No, it's yeah, like this is a view's a view at this point. There's like one agility method we're going to use to render the content zone, and then the rest is just whatever you want. So I'll show you that in a moment.
Yeah, you just have to label the content zone correctly, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what we're going to do here, just to keep things consistent, you should actually scroll down here to. Oops, too far, way too far. There we go. If you want to make it look nice, or you can just keep it the same as like that one column zone that we had. This is the code here that you're going to want to add into that page template. So once you've got that partial view created for your template, in the slides, if you browse to 10.7, which kind of means you have to go over and then down. So over to the 10th slide and then down to the 7th slide. You can just copy this code and just paste it directly into Visual Studio. It's probably going to be the easiest thing for you guys to do. So I'm going to hit copy, go back to Visual Studio, and just sort of paste that in. So this is what your template partial view should look like. Again, you can grab that code within 10.7 in the slides. So I will wait a moment or two.
Did you say the code's in
10.7.
Oh, that's 11.8.
Oh,
Yeah.
what is it?
Oh, it's like the tiny little bottom thing.
Oh, yeah.
Over and down.
Yeah, that's a lot. Go back to 9.
Oh, okay.
As you got the
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. It's free too, actually. Like I'm using the free version. As long as you make it publicly available, so like you can search for this and find this online. So, but that's fine. I don't mind it being online, right?
Cool. That's really
But it was really easy to set up too, and it's actually like a. The cool thing too is this actually. So this is actually connected to my presentation.
Oh, okay.
Not actually using it, but so I could do something like this.
Oh, sweet.
Oh my god, WebSockets.
You're good.
Yeah, this is just using web.
Exists in the current device, that's pretty soon.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm like, how am I gonna copy?
That's
not possible. Remember did the bear poke thing?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, how we doing, folks? You guys good in the front row here? How we?
It's no problem. It's no problem, right?
It's no problem.
Finish. I'm installing Visual Studio.
Jeff, how you doing?
Oh, the extension. Yeah. We'll get to that soon as well. How are you guys gonna be able to get code in it? Oh, it's installed.
I can just add stats to this, right?
All right, well, I'm gonna take a quick bio break.
Yeah, I'll just put it here.
Are you seeing real loading variables as far as the back-end platform?
Yeah, on how it operates, but, and I can do that for Bootstrap as well, right?
So I was building so many.
I guess I gotta get back up to the. That's what I mean. Maybe I don't know if it's functional. Control how it was one of the servers that controls features. And that server will stay in control right now. It's only on the sure. Yeah, no, that's how we will deploy that. Yeah, I used this a while back, but
It's our app.
to block the side of the actual website. Usually constant folder.
But I couldn't install on this. I don't have this for me. Yeah.
It must be Visual Studio being this.
Being Visual Studio is what you're doing?
Oh boy. As long as you can run it, I probably can't run it. Try to try to play.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Oh,
So
No, you don't need to do that one.
Oh, you don't want
Not yet.
So you can it's VIT.
Oh, it's that. Yeah. The first time you run it, there's no
Download the
slides. Shouldn't even know. If you still have that, you can close that file and do it on
There we go. So now you're in the presentation there. Were you able No, don't worry about that. You can close that. You don't need that.
You guys both got it running?
Yep.
Yeah, we just posted it.
We're not accessing it.
Sorry? Yeah, we just got pasted that. Did you run it? Yeah, that's right.
I don't need to.
I don't see a web browser. Where's your web browser? I can see his.
Right.
Oh,
Scan away your scan thing?
It's not working.
Still not working?
Or well, unless it's, I wouldn't know what it's supposedly done download. Actually, if you close that block up in CSH now and reopen it, it should be fine, but it's only building the files that you need. Did you get?
I think so.
It's just.
That was actually.
I'm gonna have to.
I think I did it this time.
Because Visual Studio won't work on your laptop, but I can give you a version sheet that I'm back and go into. I think that should work on that. Well, you can certainly follow along on this, but part of this workshop is we want to get you to follow along in terms of the code that we're doing. So you'll need Visual Studio installed. So I can give you a VM, but
think you're gonna have to for you guys some help or get started. Sure. I'll give you the VM and see if you can work. It might not work. We'll do our best there.
Send email the information to Sean or me. But I was just saying.
I'm not sure if I created the same file.
No, that's right. Create the translation. Did the create the module? Copy sales practice.
I don't think it's gonna work, but it's worth a shot. Can you remote into Windows machine
From mine?
from Mac?
Oh, you need the client.
So,
She's just gonna follow along. So
Sorry about that. All right.
also, you guys. I'll just create the template so you can create a page. Oh, yeah. I don't think so.
So let's say we got the stuff in and that's it.
No, I don't think yeah, I'll just create the copy. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna get going again in about 30 seconds or so.
That was your 25-minute break.
God damn it. God damn it.
All right, so yeah, just to recap, last thing we're looking at here is make sure you got that template created and use this code if you can. All right, so now that we've actually, the first thing we did is we created the template in the cloud. We added the code. Now let's actually go and test this out. It's the last step we need to do here. So go to Pages and click on Website and just select the new page, the little plus sign in the top left corner. And under Page Template, select your new template as it shows up here. So the one you created should be displayed here, whatever you named it. Sorry? No, you don't need to publish the code. You're just running this locally.
So template.
Yeah, you don't need to publish. Yeah, that's it. So now you can just go back to Content Manager. I think you do need to build it. Probably. Yeah, it's a new file. But not publish. Yeah, it's a new file. You do need to build it. All right, so you're going to select blog template at the top here. You can name this page whatever you want. I'm just going to call this blog. Easy. Bam! Yeah, blog. And then in the main content zone here, you can add whatever you'd like. But just let's keep it easy. We can just select a rich text area here, and just pop in some content here. So.
How did you add the, sorry, how did you add the rich text there, right?
Yeah, we can go back here. So to add a new module to a page, you want to click the plus button where it says main content zone, and that's going to add one of the selected modules to the page. I'd recommend adding a rich text area, and then just like add in some like random content there, just so you can just so we can sort of test out the layout of our page template and make sure that this is working correctly.
How did you add that auto-created ipsum stuff?
That was I can't take credit for that, but that was just a browser plugin.
Got it.
But it would be cool to have that integrated into Agility. Just click a button and testing that.
So you just created a rich text area, right?
Yeah, I just added a rich text area there. I mean, in theory, you could add any of those modules, but the chance to check out what the rich text area looks like as well. And just add in some content. It doesn't have to be a big paragraph. Just put something in there so you can test your output.
I would have italicized some words.
And so what we're going to do now is, after you've added that, there is one step here that I missed, and you might have missed as well. If you right-click, you're going to have to build your project. Because you've added a new CS HTML file, you do need to rebuild it and recompile it. So just right-click the MSC project, hit build.
Will this slash blog?
Yep.
Will this send a view up to the server?
No, this view just stays directly on your local machine.
Okay.
Yep. So, right now, we have a deployed web server. The page we've created is not published, so that doesn't even know about the page yet, so we're good. No, it's not automated. So, yeah, when we want to deploy this, we deploy the entire code base up. Or we could just deploy it one thing at a time if we really wanted to and test it in production too. We can do that. But for now, we'll just test all this stuff locally and then just deploy it all together. So in this main content zone, we've got a rich text area. The last thing we need to do here is just verify this. So on your local host, if you actually just refresh the page, by default, this new page we create is actually just going to show up in the menu. This is actually how dynamic page menus work. John, everyone. So refresh it here. The page you created should be at the top. It's probably going to be the last item in the menu. So, and just click on that to run the page, or you can just type it into the URL. And then there we go. We have a basic page template. What makes this one a little bit different from the main content zone is that it just restricts the width, so it's like 730 pixels wide as opposed to like the 1280 or whatever it was set to before. And you'll see here in the actual page template code, we do have a block of inline CSS. I do have a note here that normally you would put this into an actual CSS file. You probably wouldn't want to have that inline CSS, but you can do that.
Of course you would.
And then the actual template code here, the only relevant piece to render the content zone is that one line HTML.render content zone. So that's going to render the outputs of all the modules together in that placeholder on the page template.
Yeah, you can also do time publishing.
All right, are we good here? You guys look good. All right. So the next thing we're going to do here is we are going to create a new module. So we've just done a page template right now, and we added a rich text area. So the only thing we've really done is just create a new template. We still need to actually output some new stuff like our actual blog details. So take you guys through this process. This is what we're going to do. We're going to create a new module definition and call it a blog post. So we're creating a brand new module that you can then add to the page and we'll be able to test. We're also going to go through the process of downloading and refreshing that C# API file that we have. So because we're creating a new module definition, we're going to have new classes of data to interact with. So we need to download those and put those into our MVC project. so we can reference our content by a strongly typed language. And then the last step is we're actually going to add the code for the module output, and then just test it on a page. So first thing we're going to do to create a new module is we're going to go similar to pages. We're going to go to settings. You scroll down here to module definitions under customization. So here it lists all of the modules that are in our sandbox instance right now, and we're going to create a brand new one. So click the star or the plus sign to create a new one. Under definition details here, we're going to call this blog post details. And leave the reference name as it auto-populates. Don't mess around with that. The description is actually pretty important for modules, because if you don't put a description for a module here and an editor tries to add a module to a page, their only reference is going to be the title of the module, which may not really give them enough information on what they're actually adding to the page. So they add it, they preview it, they realize it's not the right thing, and then switch back and forth. So it would be best to be as descriptive as possible. So for this, I will say this module. Maybe not this module, that's too specific to propose. Let's say we'll display the details of a blog post. We know the name kind of says that too. It's a bit more descriptive. And then there's some other settings down here, but you can just leave them all the same. Once you've got that in there, you can click on the Form Builder tab. The Form Builder is where you're actually going to create the properties that you want your editors to be able to set. So that's like the content you want your editors to be able to set for a blog post. So let's think about this. What kind of fields might you want to put on a blog post? Like, what does a blog post contain? Any ideas here? Title, yeah, that's a good one. Author is another great one. Category, image. Those are all great answers. And yeah, normally what a blog post consists of. For simplicity, we're not going to have enough time to go through all the different various field types. So we're just going to add a few here. So we're going to click on the plus button for fields, and under field label here, we're going to create title. Capital T. Try to keep your field properties capitalized if you can. And you'll notice here that under field type, if you select that, you only have one option, and it's text. That's because, little known fact, title is actually a reserved field in our system, in the database. So there's actually a specific database field for title for these items, whereas all the other fields you add are dynamic fields. So if you do use the word title, it's actually better for database performance, but it doesn't really matter. So if you're wondering why you can only select text for title, that's why. If you need to use something else, just call it something else. So, but title is pretty standard, and it's always text anyhow, so that's fine. So we're going to scroll down here, and under validation property, let's mark this as required, because a blog post shouldn't be able to exist without a title. So once you have that select to required checkbox true, you can hit save and new to save that and create a new field. So now that we've initialized that title field, we can add another one. So the next field let's actually add the details of that blog post. So that's like the body of that blog post, and something that the editor is going to be actually working in. Most editors are more comfortable in a sort of WYSIWYG editor interface, but of course you can always take this further and make super structured content if you wanted to. But for this example, we'll just use an HTML field, which is a WYSIWYG editor, like the rich text area that we saw. So for field label, just enter details. And for field type, you'll see here now we have all the available field types that are here. Just select HTML. You'll see here we can also set a default value. We can just leave that blank. And under validation properties, select required. Again, a blog post shouldn't be able to exist if it doesn't have any actual content in it. Hit save and new again to save that one and add a new one. And the last field we're going to create here is an image. Blog posts usually have an image. People like images. So let's create a new field here, call it image. And under field type, we are going to, let's scroll down first. We're going to add a image. So select image from the field type there. And you'll notice that there's a bunch of other properties that show once you've selected images. Let's mark this as required first. Again, needs to have an image in order for it to display. You'll see there's also other validation settings that we have here. So each field has some other explicit settings. So we've got file size, height, width, and then valid file types. So you can really control what types of or size images editors use here for this field. There's also some stuff down here on thumbnails. That is pretty much there just for legacy support. We do have a new way of thumbnailing images, and I will show you that afterwards. So you can leave the rest as is. Just hit save and close. So now you've got 3 fields, so it should look like this: title, details, and image. And now the last thing we need to do here before we save and create this module def is click on output template. Just like we did for page definitions, we have to create code that's going to be executed when this module is rendered on the page. So under output template, you're going to select one of 2 options: partial view or MVC controller action. Or like I said before, we can use inline code. But here, we're going to select MVC controller action, mainly because it kind of hits 2 birds with 1 stone, shows you how to deal with an MVC, and then shows you how partial views also work. So let's do that. So under controller here, we're ultimately going to be creating a brand new controller within our MVC code, although we could use an existing one if we wanted. So for controller here, I'm going to put in blog. And action, let's put in blog post details. And it should be all one word, no spaces.
The controller name, does that match what you called your blog earlier?
Yeah, so well, you can call this controller whatever you'd like, actually, because the next step after this is we're going to be creating a controller that matches the one that we have here. So we'll be creating a blog controller, for example, from scratch, and just keep all the code in there. So got those in place. Now you can hit save and close. This will create your module definition. So at this point, you can see it listed here. And cool thing too is we can actually go to our blog page. We can actually just remove the rich text area. And now we can actually add that module we just created already. So we can select blog post details when you've added that module to this page. And you can actually you can start doing content entry now. Even though we have no code that actually does anything or outputs anything, we can still start inputting content here. So let's just put in some sample stuff here. Call it whatever you want. Under image, you can upload your own image if you want, or just hit browse to select stuff that's already in there. I'm just going to select this one here. And then we're ready here. You just hit save and close. And we've got this here. Now, if we were to run this right now locally, we would get an error because we have no controller named blog yet in our solution, so there'd be a problem there. So the next step what we're going to do is we're actually going to add the code for this. So in Visual Studio, we are going to go to controllers. You're going to select controllers and right click, and you can click on add and select controller. You're going to want to name this controller the same name that you created in the module definition. So we had that controller called blog, so I named mine appropriately blog controller. And then now we get this scaffolded little code here. So now we need to add code to that. We need to essentially create the action result so that when that module gets executed, that action result gets hit, and we can do our own logic within there. Before we do that, though, we need to refresh the C# models, because we just created a new schema, we want to be able to reference that schema within our code. You could do it by using dynamic objects, but those kind of suck, so we're not going to do that. So there are two ways to refresh your C# API. And what I'm talking about here is actually this file under models. This is an auto-generated file. So this has all of your properties from all of your content and module definitions in your instance. So this is already pre-set up with all the stuff that's in the sandbox. But the rule of thumb, don't ever manually change this file. You never have to. It's completely automated. But the way in which you refresh this file, there's two different ways to do it. The default way is to be in Agility. Go back to, oops. I clicked on the icon. Go to Settings, and back to where module definitions were, where you created this thing. There's actually a button up here that says Download API. So you could do it this way. That's going to download a C# file, which is the exact same file we were just looking at in our thing. So if you open that up, you'll actually see it is the same. So you could just copy that, paste it, and replace it in your local MVC file. However, one of the things you'll notice here is the namespace is wrong. In our project, our namespace is something different for our models. Probably don't want to change that. So the only thing you would change is copy everything and then just set the namespace back to what you had it before. So that's because Agility doesn't know the namespace of your project, so it's just taking a guess at what your namespace might be. So that's one way of doing it, but it's kind of slow, and especially if you're making changes to definitions over and over and over again, like you keep adding a field, realizing you forgot one, adding another one. Going back and forth can be a little cumbersome, and we realize that. So we've actually built a Visual Studio extension to be able to just click a button and just have it refresh within Visual Studio. So I don't think many of you have this installed right now, but if you do, you can use it, or you can take a moment to install it now. It really doesn't take long at all to install. You can actually do this by going to Tools, Extensions and Updates. And make sure you click on the online thing, because I always get stuck in this, end up searching my installed ones. And you can actually just search Agility, and it should be the first result there, or third, fourth. Use the Agility CMS Model Updater. So I already have this installed. For those of you that don't already have it installed, take a moment and install it now. Trust me, you're going to be updating this file a couple times today, so just take the time to do it now. It's going to tell you that you need to close Visual Studio and then it'll install, but we've tested this. It takes like 30 seconds for it to install, so take the time to do it now.
Yeah, we also saw that this morning. That's right. We installed that, but we don't see the button. Yes.
Well, except for the whole NDT 40.
Yeah, that was the curveball that I threw, just to,
Right, if you have it installed, you'll need to restart Visual Studio, by the way.
Oh, cool. You can just go in there, right click, it says Agility CMS. That's it. So if you go to the class files models, see that sample, right click it.
Yeah.
Right click it.
Oh, there it is.
Agility CMS update.
well, you guys are going ahead of me now. Just do it. It's kind of intuitive.
We're using a password right there. You have it?
I follow.
Guys, it only works for CS files, not CS files, by the way. Like when you right click on it, it shouldn't be the solution file or the project file.
Yeah.
CS file.
Yeah, and make sure when you actually are going through the process of updating, just right-click this file, MVC4SampleSite_API, and you should see the Agility CMS in the context menu. So just select that and hit Update Model.
I love it.
And it will ask you for your password once if you haven't done it before.
That's I like that feature. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, we do too. It saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it said yes, and then now this file is boom up to date. Oh yeah. So Under Agility CMS, you want to hit Update Model. So if you right-click on that file in particular,
Oh, okay.
hit Update Model, it will prompt you for your username and password for your account, and then there'll be a second prompt as well to confirm the namespace. Just leave that default. It's always right.
It reads the file for the namespace?
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Your Agility username and password?
Yeah, you'd only use that if you wanted to change the namespace at the time. I don't know why we have that in there, but yeah.
Well, there's some occasions where you might want.
You might want it, yeah.
Yeah.
Or just to double check what your namespace actually is. Yeah, so yeah, and you can see once you've done it once with Visual Studio, it does cache your password. You're gonna do it over there again, yeah, there's the namespace confirmation.
So I have it here.
Cool. So now that we've got our schema available to work with here,
So I should do this.
Oh my god, they're so far away.
well, I think we're gonna bring it up. We're gonna yeah. I'm not gonna wait that long. So has everyone been able to refresh their models?
Yep. Second year.
Yep. So what you're gonna do, like the next step after this is probably gonna want to jump to this slide here. Where's the code? And just copy the code for this thing. There it is. So go to 11.13 on the slides. You'll see some code here. Just copy and paste it. Copy and paste the entire contents of this into your blog controller. So again, that's I'll leave this up. It's 11.13 on the slides.
Kill what's there and replace it.
Sorry.
Getting rid of what was there.
Yeah, just delete delete the scaffold code and just paste that right in. So you're going to take that code there, and like I said, just delete all the stuff that's in there, and just paste that in. So for those of you that are familiar with MVC, there's not really a lot special going on here. This is like really standard controller code. This inherits from a controller class. There's no special agility controller or anything like that. These are just regular controllers. The only thing I'll point out here is that the action result blog post details has a parameter, module_blog post details. That module_blog post details is actually the auto-generated C# class for your module. It's just prepended with modules so you don't get them confused with your content definitions. And agility.web automatically takes care of getting the content for that module, and it passes this to this function. So you don't even have to do any data access lookup. It's just there for you. You have an object with all the stuff in your module you need to get going. So really all we're doing here is just returning a partial view, passing that module as a view model to our view. So this is really simple implementation of it. And in fact, if this was how we were going to finish this module off, I wouldn't even recommend it being a controller action. It's easy to just be a partial view directly with the module being your view model. And Agility.web will also automatically pass that data along. So it's no point of having an action result here. But you'll see as we go on, we're going to be adding a few extra things to this. So that's why we're doing it this way. Cool. So now that we have this here, the next part is we need to actually create a view to hold for this blog post details view that we're actually going to render. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down into views. And following the path here, we need to create a new folder called blog that's going to hold our thing in there. So just right click on views and add a new folder. So you're going to add a new folder under views, just call it blog, just to match the path of the partial view that we are going to be rendering. Once you have that folder in place, the next thing is you're going to create a new partial view file called blog details. So under blog, just click on add, view, and call that blog post details. So yeah, this is what your structure should look like. Under views, you should have a folder called blog and a view name called blog post details.cshtml. Once you've got that in place there, we're going to go and just paste some more code in here and save some time. So under here, if you guys go to slide 11.15, go there and just copy the code and paste it directly into your view. So you're going to go to slide 11.15. We're just going to copy some boilerplate, well, it's not the boilerplate. We're going to copy some code that's going to output our module properties here. Oh yeah, just so if you use a different field name, that's fine. Just change it. Just change it from model.details to model.body. You have this Foundling type file there, so you'll know. It'll tell you if you've named something wrong. Yeah, that happens all the time. Cool. So here at the top we have our two models where we pass from our controller, and then we're doing a little bit of logic here. So even though we said that our image should be required, who knows, later down the line, some developer could go into Agility and be like, images shouldn't be required anymore, and they deselect that. If your code doesn't check for nulls, it's going to access an object that doesn't exist, and you're going to have a null reference exception. So when in doubt, check for nulls, or build an extension that checks that for you. So we're going to check, make sure, hey, if there's an image here, let's render the image. So if there is one, we're outputting an image here. And you'll see that the source parameters and the alt parameters are referencing the URL and the label properties of the image. Again, this is an object that we're referencing. The other thing I want to point out here as well is the ad hoc thumbnailing that we're doing. So we know that the width of our page template is 730 pixels. We want to try to make sure that if an editor uploads something that's like 2000 by 2000, we're not rendering it at 2000 by 2000 because that's a pretty heavy load on the image download. So what you can do a couple different ways to limit that. We already talked about image validation, where you can set that they can only upload an image that matches these specifications, greater than, less than, or equal to. Or another way you can do is just allow them to upload any size image or something that's at least 730 pixels or greater, and then in your code you can just automatically thumbnail to 730 pixels. So that's what we're using now to do thumbnailing, as opposed to creating pre-thumbnail definitions and pre-generating them. The way that this works is if that image that's been done has never been generated yet, when you hit that in a URL, our CDN will actually generate and thumbnail the image, and then it just saves it there, so that the next request that hits it, it's cached and ready to go. So it allows you to, on the fly, generate thumbnails as you need to.
Is it strictly in the cache? Does it get flushed out if you blow the website away? Like if you start and restart or anything like that?
There is a, Joel could probably speak to this a bit more, but there is a background cleanup task that we have. So thumbnails that were generated at some point and then never used, we just clear them out. And then if there is a new request that comes in for those, then they just get generated again. So there is a life cycle to them after a while, but it's like, if a thing hasn't been hit in 6 months, just remove it kind of thing. I don't know if 6 months is the threshold, but it's kind of what we do. Oh yeah, sorry.
Question, you know that project that we discussed. Animated GIFs, does it handle
Resizing that?
Animated
it's
GIFs?
a little bit more, I don't know if you guys know
See
that.
that? SVG, I don't think we do that.
It does GIFs. It does GIFs. I don't think we've ever tested it with an animated one.
I mean, we can totally
give it a shot.
You have a package that you've used in the past?
We have a project right now that we need to build out composite animated GIFs, and part of that is making thumbnails out of what's created. So we're looking at building the next iteration of this platform eventually. So that functionality we need.
Well, if it's something that you guys can help us out,
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
just
And also,
put it in our-
because we do GIFs already, I wonder if it'll just work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a GIF is a GIF, isn't it? Regardless of whether it's animated. Yeah. We'll have to give it a shot.
You might have to break it apart into the frames, resize, and then put that together, but we can give you the code to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Cool. All right. So once you've got this code in here, you're going to want to build your solution again because we added a controller and we also added the partial view, so you do need to rebuild it. It'll compile. If you had named your fields something different than what I had named them and you just copy and pasted the code in, you should get an error, I believe, on compilation, or at least a red squiggly line. All right, so going back to, now that we've built that, now we can actually test out this page again. So remember the last time we tested this page, we just had like some dummy content in here. And so what we did is we had added that new module that we created. We added this on the same page. So if we refresh this, our module should be being used right now. So if I refresh this, I should see image at the top and body of text.
Nice.
And a title, I think.
I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be a tingle.
There we go. So now we've got image at the top, title of the post, and the HTML just below that.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that's right.
further to our conversation on thumbnailing, you'll see that this image here is 750 by 500, and I'm thumbnailing at 730. I could also just change this to anything else that I want. Let's change it to 150. Then it renders at this size.
Yeah, sure, you can buy some.
There's also some advanced query string parameters you can pop onto these, where you can have it so that it like does not maintain an aspect ratio, and you can have a set of background color, like white or black, or I think you can set the color, right?
You can do fill with any RGB color.
Yeah.
Do some complex stuff. It's not that complex, but very strange.
What about double density?
Sorry, say that again.
You can decrease the quality if that's what you're doing.
I just meant like, is there any way, like, I'm just wondering how you would support like a double density display.
Oh, like a random display, for example, right?
Yeah.
At symbol with description. Yeah, you forgot to add. So you can add
density value on column image, and then some CMS will recognize that as one of the density thing, and then they'll load up a density.
Right. So, if you wanted to do something like that, you would.
No, don't change it there. Just change it in
I see that like more and more.
Yeah. We've had in previous projects we've built. We've handled that in various ways. One way is you just sort of always render a higher resolution than the one you're actually than the container you're showing, so that it's double density. So like if our container is 100 pixels,
Yes.
we have 200. It's always 200.
For sure. Yeah, that's a typical. I do that with CSS.
Yeah, and then exactly. So you could do that. Or what you could do as well is you have different image fields in Agility, and then be able to in JavaScript be able to detect which one you use.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But the CDN itself doesn't really play much of a role in that, unless you just want to have it thumbnailed at a different thing. Actually, what you could do is have one image, and then in JavaScript be able to sort of play around with the query string to generate a different thumbnail. Yeah. Okay, cool. So was everyone able to build and verify their first module? Okay.
I think I'm good. Yeah, get built.
I think now might be a good time just to take like maybe not 15. Let's do a 10-minute break. So yeah, for those of you that wanted some time to catch up as well, now is the time. We'll resume at let's say 3:50. So 10 to 4.
Yeah, okay.